Mike Marlowe. Welcome back to the show. How are you?
Good. It's good to be back.
I was just telling you before the show how excited I am to have you back on, and especially the subject that we're going to be talking about today, which is 203k loans. And I'm just happy about this podcast all around.
Yeah, it's going to be a fun one.
So, interestingly, you were on a few weeks back with the use of the word further podcast. I don't know if you noticed, I love creating a little bit of controversy. Who knew that one little word was going to blow up the internet for home inspections?
I know it just makes you think.
Yeah.
What am I saying in my report?
Yeah, exactly.
And that's what it all comes down to. Are you getting across the message that you want to convey, that you think you're conveying?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, and there was really no hard answer at the end of the podcast. There was arguments for both of it, and I learned something. So it was a good podcast.
yeah. So let's see what trouble we can cause today.
Awesome. I hopefully we can get some controversy. So I'm excited about this one because this is something you are very much an expert in, and I am a complete noob. I say I'm not even a noob. I'm not even beginning in it. But 203k loans, completely different field that I have never ever done. I've built 203k websites and pages. I understand the concept of them, but that's like saying I've built websites about colonoscopies, but I couldn't perform one. I understand the
Possible
concept.
that, right?
Maybe that was an awkward illustration.
You don't have a borescope or a suroscope?
Yeah, exactly. Sewer scope, same thing, right?
Exactly, and I have described it that way before.
Yeah. We'll start doing discount colonoscopies on the side.
Yeah, it's colonoscopy for your house.
Yeah, exactly. So maybe, Mike, you could start out for those of us who don't know 203k loans. I think the majority of our listeners do, just in case there are some that don't. What's a 203k loan? Just a basic overview.
Okay, so 203k loan, and just as a quick aside, there's that is an FHA product. There are also Fannie Mae conventional products and a VA product that
Oh, okay.
are very similar. There's some different um, you know, guidelines in them, but the overall process is the same. So, we're just going to say 203k today just for simplicity. But what it is a mortgage product that allows someone to either purchase or refinance a home and use the loan covers not only the purchase of the loan, but you also finance the repairs that are needed.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and these are a probably underutilized loan product, but they allow you to buy a house that is not perfect and turn it into a home that you love.
Hmm.
So, my first experience with this was back in 2010 when Jamie and I were transferring from Texas up to Maryland. And, the housing market at that time was still recovering from the crash. And move-in ready houses were at the extreme of our price range. And thankfully, our real estate agent told us, "Hey, why don't you look at you know fixer uppers and check into using a 203k loan?" At that time, I wasn't a home inspector; we were still active duty Navy, and we looked into it and found a fixer upper that was very rough. The pictures on my website are of that house, the
Mm-hmm.
before and after pictures. So you can see how rough it was. But we used the 203k to turn this into a very nice house. Um, and we ended up living there 6 years and got a nice little chunk of change out of it at the end. When when my career in the Navy was over, my wife made me get a job. One of my friends was a home inspector, and he was also a 203K consultant. And that kind of led into not only the home inspector career, but also becoming a consultant as well, because foreclosures were very prevalent in the Maryland area at the time.
Mm-hmm.
So this is 2013. And so I did a bunch of them up there, and we just carried on the business down here in Texas. And Jamie, also a home inspector now and a 203K consultant. And we have done, I don't know how many, but well over 100 of these that we've consulted on.
Nice.
So I keep saying that consultant term. One of the aspects of a 203K is that you have a 203K consultant. And that is someone like us that we come in before you buy the house and we do an inspection on the house. What we're looking for is FHA minimum property standards. What has to be fixed? Is there is the roof shot? Is there, you know, structural issues? That's very common down here with foundations. Um, are we still dealing with knob and tube in this house? Whatever. So those are the things that have to be fixed. So we figure that out. Then we turn to the client and say, okay, so this is what we have to do. What do you want to do? Do you want that new kitchen? Do you want the new bathrooms? Do you want to put flooring throughout? Do you want to do an addition? There's a lot you can do with these loans, limited basically by, what can the house appraise for after the repairs are done, and what's your budget?
Gotcha. So, are there specific intervals where you have to come back through the project? It's a
Yep.
multi-visit process, correct?
Right. So I always say we're the only one that's with the client from start to finish. So ahead of time, we write up the specification of repairs, which is line by line. What are we doing to this house? And it gets as detailed as we're replacing 20 squares of shingles, or 500 linear feet of uh, baseboards, or 20 feet of cabinets, whatever. We lay all that out, and we give a price to it. The contractor bids the project. We do a sanity check on that bid. Is the contractor way too high, or even worse, are they way too low? Are they going to be able to do the project for this money? Once that's all finalized, the bank does their thing, loan closes, construction starts, and then when the contractor is ready to get paid, we go back and do a draw inspection.
Mm-hmm.
And we walk through that same specification of repairs. Okay, what did you do? Okay, you replaced the roof. Okay, we're going to pay you for the roof. And on down through for whatever they've completed. A normal project is going to have up to 5 draws. I've had projects done in as few as 1 draw, like if it's just a foundation repair. Then, the foundation company comes in, does their thing, engineer signs off on it, we go back. Yep, foundation's repaired. I don't feel like a drunken sailor walking across the floor anymore. Yeah. And so fill out the draw sheet, everybody signs it, goes into the bank, contractor gets paid, project's done. And sometimes we're there 5 times. I've been there up to 10 times on really big projects. But yeah, we're there from start to finish. We go out for each draw inspection. The nice thing that everybody's probably asking about is we get paid for each of those. So
Yeah, and that was going to be my question because at the end of the day, if we're listening to this podcast and we're like, oh, I'd like to do 2 or 3K loan inspections or consulting, is it worth it? So Does it pay well? Does it pay as well as a home inspection hour per hour, or?
It's getting better. The fees are set, the maximum fees on a 203K specifically are set by the government.
Hmm.
Uh, just, was it last fall, they finally like realized that things had gotten a little bit more expensive and raised our fees. So up front for the specification of repairs, you know, if the project is it's based on the amount of repairs, and it's a
Right.
sliding scale. Starts at about 500, goes up to $2,000.
Gotcha.
Let's see, I should have had that one up in front of me before we started.
But that's okay. But that at least gives us an idea. It's not like, when we hear the word draw inspection, sometimes we think of like those mortgage inspections that pay $20 to $30 to go and take some pictures. This
Yep.
is
No, these
much better.
are legitimate fees.
Yeah.
Um, okay. So, and of course, the first one I look at hasn't updated their fees. There we go. Okay, so actually, it's yeah, 1,000 up to 2,000,
Okay.
um, and it doesn't take a lot to get up into some nice money. The draws are 375 plus mileage each,
Oh wow.
and
Okay.
you can charge up to the government mileage rate, whatever that is this year. I have to look it up every time I do a draw. Um, and does it pay as much as a home inspection? That really comes down to how good you are at working out the initial specification of repairs. That's
Right.
probably the thing that's going to take you the longest. Yeah. If you know how to estimate, and that's the big key here, is knowing how to estimate construction costs. If you know how to estimate and you can write a SOR in 2 or 3 hours, then you're making good money. If it takes you 10 to 15 hours, then not so much. But that just
Gotcha.
comes with practice.
Yeah, well, it's kind of like your first home inspection. Are you going to get paid $800 for your first 1,500 square foot home and get done in 2 hours? Probably not.
No,
You're gonna. I remember. I don't know if you remember your first home inspection, Mike. My first
vaguely.
home. I still remember mine. I fretted over that. I think I was on site for 5.5 hours on this tiny little 1,300 square foot house, and I wrote my report for another like 5 hours at home,
Yeah,
and just fretting over every word, every whisker of that home. Um, then you get better. Yeah.
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 Thankfully, I was working for someone when I started out, so I had him alongside me.
Okay. See, I was
Yeah,
just
so
out in the
it wasn't
wind.
that stressful, but it was interesting, and
Yeah.
it was that quick.
No, well, and so I imagine this is better too if you have someone to teach you how to do it. And I don't stab me if this is not appropriate, but would AI be an appropriate tool to help us with these?
I I don't know.
Oh, okay.
I have not um, I have not gotten very deep into AI at all, so I
Well,
don't know the capabilities of it for something like this.
I've done not a full SOR, which is a scope of repair. I imagine is what that means, but I have used it for, hey, give me an estimate for how much this would cost in this specific area, and here's all my stuff for it. Like how deep the concrete is, and the spacing of this and that, and it gets okay. You know, it's not exact. I think you could probably fine tune it, but it's probably not exact enough for what you're doing. But I imagine it probably help you get in the ballpark at least to give you a basis of it.
Yeah, yeah. I use estimating books, cost books
Yeah.
that are specific to region or at least have region multipliers.
Hmm.
So, especially for the stuff that, the weird stuff that needs to be done on a house that, haven't come across before. And so, well, I know it needs to be done, but, how much is this going to cost to do? You know, so it does take a little research sometimes to get that close.
Hmm.
So,
Well, and you had mentioned before that it's so not every home inspector has a construction background, and we were talking about this beforehand.
right,
It really helps if you have one, is what you told me, correct?
definitely. Um, and that would be key to making an easy transition, being able to say, yeah, you at least have the experience to know what goes into, you know, doing a certain task.
Hmm.
So,
Well, I can imagine, like, say you're bidding a floor, and like, okay, laying down the tile is going to be X amount of dollars per square foot, but you know from your construction experience, this floor was put in 1980, so it's going to have black paper under it. You're going to have to take that off, and then the floor is going to need to get leveled. So you're looking at that going, it's not a matter of estimating how much square foot of floor needs to get replaced, but what's going to have to happen. What did the
before,
contractor before that and
yeah,
after that, and what problems is the contractor going to run into? There's another guest on our show that we have all the time, Jay Wynn. He's always doing that to me. Like I'll be like, oh yeah, we'll just do this, and then he's like, yeah, but if you get in there, you're gonna have these three things happen. I'm like, dag nabbit, and he's always
yeah,
right with it. But that's
yeah,
construction experience. You know, once you get your hands dirty and you start ripping things out, this is what you're gonna find.
yeah, yeah. And you think, okay, rewiring a house, okay, what's the panel cost? What's the wire cost? What's the receptacles cost? All of that. Also, what's the drywall repair going to cost? What's
Yeah.
repainting the house after that going to cost? Yeah, it's all of the second and third and on order effects that you have to consider.
I
So,
think about uh contractors often estimate things wrong because they leave themselves a little leeway. If I get in there and I find it, I'll just charge more. But like you estimate for ripping out these walls and re sheetrocking, but then you don't realize that it's horsehair plaster and lath. There's
oh
a
yeah,
big difference between ripping out and if you don't have that experience with it, you're just kind of like, oh, these are just kind of some cruddy walls.
yep,
So the average home inspector will know some of that or most of it, hopefully. But at the end of the day, construction experience does help. It might slow down someone's transition into the industry. I would imagine if they don't have that experience.
yeah, and that's one of the biggest things is we have to remember that we're consulting, just like a home inspection, we're consulting on someone's big purchase, and we don't want to screw things up, for lack of a better way to say it. Yeah, tell someone, oh yeah, this is $50,000 in repairs. They, set their budget based on that, and turns out, well, it wasn't. It was 100, and you don't realize that until they already own the house and they're knee deep in renovation. That's not the time to do it.
Yeah.
So, the other, like I was talking about, sanity checks. The biggest problem we have is contractors underbidding to get the job because they're used to that. Oh, I found something. It's going to cost a little bit more. You know,
Hmm.
well, this is a fixed price contract, and there is a contingency built into the budget, but that's for true um, emergencies. It's, you open up a wall and find hidden old termite damage, and now you got to reframe a part of a wall. That's a valid contingency thing. Yeah. The contractor underbidding a foundation repair and nothing is changed is not an emergency. That's a contractor screw up, and that's their problem. And that's one that I've had.
Yeah.
Even after I, was kicking and screaming that there's no way this foundation is getting repaired for that amount of money, but the bank went ahead and overrode me and approved it. And sure enough, the first draw inspection, the contractor was there with his hand out looking for, basically, doubling the money on the foundation.
So, I mean, there's definitely high stakes in it. And so, just objectively looking in from the outside of this industry, I do some quick math, and maybe our listeners are doing some quick math. Okay, so let's say I do, 5 draw inspections and, one inspection where the initial one, let's say that's $2,000. That's at the high end of it, and $375 for each draw, and let's say $25, just making it even 400 for the gas that the federal government pays you. I mean, I'm thinking, okay, yeah, that's $4,000. And there's
Right.
some advantages, so I can schedule those times. So it's not like I need to land this home inspection. They only have tomorrow at 2 p.m. and you have to squeeze everything in, and it's frantic. It's like, okay, I'm coming to do this after my last inspection of the day, or I'm coming on this time, so it's easier to schedule. But then there's also some high, I don't want to call it liability. It's high moral liability. Like if we
Definitely.
mess up as a 203K loan, it's really going to jack that person up for a good long time.
It could. Yeah.
Yeah. So, is there any, how do I put this? Are there any drawbacks? Like, what's the hard part of the job? Like, I don't like going back to a house to pick up a radon test after I do the home inspection because I don't like to see the seller. I can imagine showing up and you just have this turd of a contractor. You don't want to see him. He's making a mess. Just those being the stressful parts, or is it dealing with the banks, or what's the downside of it?
Each project's different. Um, have I had contractors that I wish I could fire? Sure. Um, have I had clients that I wish I could fire? Yep, of course. And sometimes, it's not in our job description as a consultant, but sometimes we do end up being sort of a mediator and having to look at it and say, yes, homeowner, the the change order request for the termites in the wall is a legitimate, change order that you should pay, you should agree to, you know, but or telling the contractor that, sorry, you underbid. I tried to tell you, you didn't want to listen, but here we are. This is a fixed price contract. So yeah, it does take a little bit of customer service, I
Mm-hmm.
guess is the way to put it. But we've always gotten through it.
Is it more or less stress than a home inspection, or just about the same?
Yeah, it's just different stress.
Yeah. Okay. So it doesn't sound that bad in that regard. Do you
Yeah.
find do you find that well, let me ask you this first. Who do you work for as a 203K consultant? Like your fees are regulated by the government, but the bank
Right.
sends you there, but you have to talk to the client or the owner, and
And
there's contractors to deal with. Seems like it'll work a little bit for everybody, but mostly the bank. Is that pretty much it?
so, yeah, it is an interesting role. Yeah, the client is who's paying us, the homeowner.
Mm-hmm.
The bank um, is, so I'd say our main clients would be the bank and the homeowner. The,
Okay.
the bank, we are the eyes and ears for to make sure that the project is going as anticipated because that house is collateral for the loan that they made. So they want to know what's going on. And we are responsible to the bank and the homeowner to not pay out for work that's not done or work that's done incorrectly. And had one where a 2-story um, great room was framed with 2x4 walls, single 2x4, 20-foot long. I
Oh,
don't know where he found them, but that's what he framed the walls with. And it was like, okay, yeah, just tear all this down and start over.
wait, like you don't just buy 20-foot 2x4s at Home Depot.
I have no idea where he got them.
Like, how did he didn't throw that on his truck either? Like,
Yeah, it was crazy. Um, And of course, the client's wondering why everything's not quite square. It's like, well, there's a reason.
Yeah.
So
I imagine that's when it gets really uncomfortable. Is like when you're saying, "Hey, you bought this place for 120 grand and we're giving you a $350,000 loan and this guy just built it wrong." Like
yeah,
he can't build a wall and you're trusting him with the rest of your house. I imagine things get a little crazy. Can they fire a contractor and hire another one to come in to work under the same contract parameters?
yes, and that's how I got involved in this one. They had fired the contractor and the consultant
Oh, they can
uh,
do that.
on the job, and I came in, and that's when I saw that one. And yeah, that one is actually still in court.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
so yeah,
So
that one went bad, and there was really nothing. There was nobody that was going to be able to save that one at that point. So
So let me ask you about the liability on it then. Not that you're an attorney or we're giving anybody attorney advice or legal advice, but what's the liability like?
um, I I don't know. I hope I never find out.
Well, that's a
Um,
good sign then. If you've done a
yeah,
hundred of, if you've done a
I
hundred of them,
do. I do carry additional coverage for the 203K consultant side of things.
hmm
Um, but yeah, we'll find out here. Yeah, hopefully soon when if this case ever goes anywhere against this previous contractor and consultant. So,
okay.
but
I mean, let's be frank, Mike. I mean, you and I have both been in this industry for a long time. There's liability in anything if you have that big of a goof up, you know.
yeah,
I
exactly.
there's a court case around here where there was a trailer, like not a modern manufactured home, like a true blue trailer from like the 60s or something like that. And they built additions around it and they sold it as a standard home.
Yep.
So I found out about this because I walked into a home with the same situation and I walked up to the house and I go, "This is a trailer with a bunch of additions around it." And they're like, "No, it's not. No, it's not." And I walk in and I go, "Look." And the one agent that was representing my client, she just stood there and she walked outside and I'm like, okay. So then I was just showing the seller's agent. I'm like, no, this is a trailer. This house is not worth a whole lot.
Yeah.
It's not even a good trailer. So they canceled the inspection and the sellers actually were upset because they had bought the house. But the agent told me outside, she goes, I literally just got out of court for this because my clients hired a home inspector. He popped his head up. You could see the roof of the trailer in the attic. He had to
Yeah.
walk on it. And he just didn't report it. So the people went to sell their house, and she's like, I can't believe how eerily close to it this is. The people went to go sell their house, and now they took a big hit, and they sued the inspector, and then they won. And I was thinking, I'm just like, most of those home inspectors are like, oh man, I hate hearing about home inspector getting sued. I'm like, well, I mean,
That one kind of earned
yeah,
it.
he kind of earned that one.
Yeah.
He should have been able to. And then I looked at pictures of the house, and I'm like, from the outside, he should have known.
Yeah.
It wasn't like this was like, oh man, you couldn't tell. I'm like, no, that's you can tell from the outside on that one.
Yeah. Yeah. But I've
So,
had a few of those where you're inspecting a house and all of a sudden you find the the trailer in the middle of it that was built around, and it's like, okay.
yeah, well, it's a
So
big legal issue around here. After that, I guess that was a big settlement. A lot for years afterwards. This was a long time ago. For years afterwards, a lot of the brokerages around here would freak out if you said the word trailer or manufactured home. So, but
yeah,
I,
we
I,
have
I
a ton of manufactured homes in just the general area around
mhm.
us. So, yeah, and some of the additions do get a little bit creative. So,
That's a nice word for it, Mike.
yeah, some of them are great. Some of them
Yeah,
are not so much. So
yeah. It's that could be a whole nother podcast about difference between the manufactured home and you know all the wording that people use on these online listings, no matter what you call it. At the
yeah,
end of the day, a trailer is a trailer, and no matter how many additions you put around it, if the middle of the house is still a trailer, that affects the value of the building and affects what you can do with it.
yeah. And you cannot do a 203K loan on
That was my
them.
next question. You can't do one, huh?
Yeah.
Why is that?
I have no idea why not, but it's just one of the things you can't do. There's restrictions on what you can do. Um, yeah, you can't do new construction. Um, but you can move a house onto an existing foundation.
With a 203K loan?
Yeah, with a 203K loan.
Wait, can it be a new house? Like
Nope.
a
Not
no, it
like
has
if
to
you
be.
had an existing house that you wanted to move on to an existing foundation, you could do that. So,
Oh, that's interesting.
yep,
Okay. I wouldn't have
yep.
thought of that
Found
one.
it. You basically you can't do new construction.
Okay.
So if the uh, the city or whatever is saying, okay, you need to start pulling permits for new construction. Okay, now you're outside of the scope of it. They don't want the program to be for building new construction. FHA has different programs for that.
Right.
This is for fixing up a existing home.
Gotcha.
So
So I was at the International Convention in Orlando. I'm going to be there in Texas, by the way. Are you going to be there?
what up in
The,
Dallas?
yeah, the Trapea. I
Yeah,
always pronounce it wrong.
yeah, I yeah.
If you are, come by the booth and come say hi. But I
Okay,
was
yep.
in Orlando, and the booth right next to us was a 203K program. And they were nice people and stuff like that, but they had all these brochures and um, things to show you of how to get into the program and everything. And I remember thinking, I'm like, this seems like it seems like a low barrier to entry, but a high barrier of paperwork. Is that true, or was that maybe just that booth, or how? If so, I guess I'm saying if I wanted to get into 203K loans right now, what do one of our listeners need to do? Like if they want to dip their feet in.
But you'd have to apply to HUD to get a consultant ID.
Okay.
And the application process, you can go online to HUD and look at what it is, but you're going to provide basically, hey, this is my credentials. Yeah, I'm a licensed home inspector. I have this experience with estimating construction, whatever. And then once FHA approves that, then you get your consultant ID and you're now a FHA consultant. You have to renew it every 2 years. Sometimes the FHA or HUD reminds you, sometimes they don't, but just set a calendar reminder to send in the renewal.
Is there a fee?
No,
Oh, really?
no,
Okay.
no fee. But and then you have to learn the process. And there is a ton of reading that you're supposed to do. You're supposed to affirm that you did that in the application too. But um, the mortgage guidelines, all the mortgage letters about the program, all of that. And then just getting there's programs and websites that you can use to do all of the paperwork. So it fills it out in the you can fill it out in the format that's needed. And I use one of the websites that I can just poke in all the information and have it spit out whatever forms I need to send in. But the biggest thing is the knowledge of the construction and the estimating.
Hmm.
If you don't have that, you got a lot of studying to do. If you're familiar with that side of it, then it's just learning the program.
Well, that makes sense. Imagine where people probably go wrong is the reading part. You know, if there's a lot of us. Come on, let's admit it. Some of us have probably taken one of those online courses with Internashi and skipped right to the end and took the test. Just to see.
Can't do that down here. We have seat timers on them for Texas so that we're in there for the right amount of time.
Oh yeah,
So,
and New York State has timers and they have proxies there to make sure you fill it out and whatever. But
yeah.
I'm just talking about like the international courses. Sometimes I will skip to the end just to see if I can pass it, and then I'll go back and reread the information because I'm an information wonk. I'm like I
Yep.
want to know. But was just joking around, but the information is going to be extremely important to understand how the process goes. Because a guy like me, especially my first one, you can't wing it and hope it comes out okay.
Nope.
You have to understand what you're doing, otherwise you really jack someone up.
Yeah. I'd say probably the best thing would be to look for consultants in the area and or even out of area and get a mentor.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So that's I definitely had a few mentors along the way that I could reach out and say, "Hey, what the heck is going on with this? What can we do this? How do we do this? Whatever." So,
So let me ask you, and this is kind of a broad question. How do you get your work? Like, do you advertise to banks or do you advertise to mortgagers, or like how do
yes,
people find out about you? Okay,
yeah,
to both.
yeah, to all of the above. So we have the website or the at least a page on our website
Hmm.
dedicated to this program. That actually brings in quite a bit of business.
Okay, good.
Um, we do have several mortgage lenders that we check in with frequently. Hey, just a reminder we're here, and they send us business directly. Um, I'd say we probably get about 50% of clients, home buyers calling us directly, and then the other 50 are referred by either their mortgage lender or their agent.
Okay.
So
So the people that are contacting you directly, that's going to be like internet searches or and word of mouth and things like that, correct?
yeah,
Because I wouldn't imagine a lot of these 203K loans have high numbers on them, so that when they buy the property, that the agents are recommending, and as much as the person going out and finding it on their own. Okay,
yeah,
I'm just running it through my head like how it would play out when somebody tries to hire a 203K loan consultant.
yeah. Unfortunately, some of the agents actually work against us and try to steer clients away from the renovation loans because I've been doing this 30 years and we tried those at the beginning and they took forever to close and all of that. It's like that's the old 203k 15, 20 years ago. Yeah, now if if you have a good consultant, a good lender, you can close one of these in 30 to 45 days.
Oh, okay.
So it's not much longer than a regular mortgage would be.
Do
But
the agents kind of not get as much commission? I mean, imagine they wouldn't. Buying $120,000 house that's a fixer upper versus a $500,000 house that's already done.
but yeah, there is, you know, there could be a lower commission, but you know, if that's what their home buyer wants,
Yeah, no, I know.
yeah, would they rather, a client that can't get into something that is move-in ready and would therefore be a zero commission check, or commission check off of a $120,000 fixer upper, which would
Yeah.
which would you take?
Well, that sounds like a really good office presentation, to be honest with you. It's just how to turn a zero commission into a real commission and how 203K loans can get you there. So if
Yeah,
you have potential buyers that can't afford the a home, get them into these 203K loans. And
yep,
then, and you can also talk to them about, hey, they're a lot faster than they used to be. As little as 30 to 45 days, you can have these closed. So I imagine that would be a good office presentation, or even like first time home buyer presentations that sometimes agencies will put on. You could
yep.
talk about it in those.
CE class for real estate agents specifically on these programs to
Perfect.
educate them on what renovation loans really look like today. So
So, Mike, this has been really interesting for me, and I got to go talk to one of my friends here about 203K loans now, because I really like to dabble in it a bit here, or get into it, not dabble. But
yeah,
if you were to leave everybody here at the end of our podcast with some advice about the 203K loan that you wish somebody had told you when you had gotten into the consulting side of things, what would it be?
Um, the biggest thing is, be strong the on the estimating. That is where you're going to have the biggest um, hiccups. So don't be afraid to reach out and do your research to get the numbers right. You know, so that's the biggest trip up that you're going to see on this program, and the ones I've seen where I've been called in to save it, that's been the root cause of the issue. So
Okay.
if you don't have that background, maybe this isn't the right thing to look for. But I know we have a ton of home inspectors that came from the trades, so hopefully they know how to estimate and how to manage a construction project. So that might be something that they want to look into, because there is um, a lack of 2 or 3K consultants in large areas.
Hmm.
So it's not something that you're going to make a whole career on just doing that. There's some people that have, but few and far between. But it is a nice add-on, and there's nothing like the feeling at the end of a project when construction's done. You go to do that final draw, and you're talking to the homeowner. It's like, so what do you think? She's like, oh, I love it. It's great. It was rough. You know, getting through the construction sometimes. They want it to go faster, but once it's done, it's like, yep, this is what we wanted. So, and now they have the nicest house on the block when they bought the worst house on the block. So
It's funny that you mentioned that feeling of satisfaction, because that's one thing that I do miss from my contractor days. When you drive by the job and you collect your check and you're just talking with the homeowner, looking at the great work and moving on. Whenever we walk away from an inspection, we actually leave people with a big headache. like, like nobody's ever really that thrilled when we're on site. So, you know, as you were talking, I'm like, I missed that feeling. And actually, there was an inspector friend of mine talking. We were talking the other day, and we're like, you know what? I miss that part of things. I miss helping people and then looking at a job well done and leaving with people happy. And home inspections, it's a great industry. We love it. But sometimes it's nice to mix it up a little bit and have an opportunity to say, okay, I've left you with a beautiful home that I helped you get through, instead of here's a report of all the stuff that needs to get fixed.
yeah,
So,
yeah.
well, this sounds like a great add-on service. And it sounds like there's also openings in the industry as well. As you said, there are large areas that don't have enough 203K loan consultants. So if anybody's listening is interested in 203K loans, I say give it a try, especially if you have a construction background. As Mike said, that estimating is really where things are going to get really awesome or really sticky pretty quick.
Yeah.
Mike, as always, um, listen, you took time out of your day, out of your busy schedule. I know you're an extremely busy inspector, to talk to us about this stuff. I can't thank you enough for you sharing your experience and your knowledge on this niche part of our industry. So thank you so much, as always.
Oh, you're welcome.
You're awesome. And everybody, we'll talk to you again on the next episode of Inspector Toolbelt Talk.